everyone, my name is Josh and this one's called Interesting Musings, or Mama Mondays, Mama Mondays, Mama Mondays, Mama Mondays, Mama Mondays, Mama Mondays, Musical Mondays, featuring Josh. And today I'm going to be talking about, for Musical Mondays, a Disney film that I didn't really watch a lot when I was a child, but since growing up, I've kind of developed a new appreciation for it over time. And I found myself, I basically got the idea to talk about this film when I was coming home from Letchworth after visiting my family. And I basically just decided, I said to my brother-in-law who was with me, like, I'd really fancy watching The Hunchback of Notre Dame, the Disney version. And I literally got home, got on Disney Plus, and I decided to basically watch the thing, and I really did love it. It was such a fantastic revisit of this classic story. So The Hunchback of Notre Dame comes from the Victor Hugo novel, of the same name, which was written in 1783. And it basically is the story that Victor Hugo wanted to write to basically talk about the importance of preserving Gothic architecture, when around that time, Gothic architecture like Notre Dame were at risk of being, broken down and, torn down by the people in favour of more modernised buildings. And Victor Hugo basically wanted to talk about the importance of, preserving architecture, but instead of doing it from the point of view of an essay where he writes tons and tons of words dedicating about the history of architecture, he decided to talk about it through a fable, and how essentially the Romani people were basically refugees, and they were often claimed sanctuary in place of worship like Notre Dame and things like that. That was one of the core themes of the book, and of course this carries through into the original film, with Judge Claude Frollo, the villain of the piece, declaring, sort of war on the Romani people and locking them up in cells under the crime of witchcraft or blasphemous acts that he believes are blasphemous to him and his religion. So he basically is a bigoted arsehole pretending to be a religious zealot or a religious person, a man of God. And that's essentially what his entire story is. And this particular film is fantastic, from the opening score, the opening, musical number of the Bells of Notre Dame, to, the God Help the Outcast sequence, the song that Esmeralda sings, whose speaking voice is voiced by Demi Moore. And everything about this particular film is just fantastic out there. The song that's sung by Quasimodo is a beautiful song that I always find myself singing to whenever I hear it, either on recording or on the stage play or in the film. I always find myself singing along to it because it's such a beautiful song, and it's just really wonderful. So I just really love everything. And of course, Hellfire is probably one of my favourite villain songs of all time, because it really is dark. Not many Disney songs have choirs in them, but when they do, you really do feel the weight. Honestly, this entire film wrote the rule book on how to use a choir in a movie and how to make it feel like they really are a huge part of the narrative and a huge part of the visual style or the actual tonal style of the story. So the basic idea is that Judge called Frollo has basically killed Quasimodo's mother, who was a Romani woman who was escaping via boat into Paris to basically escape war, conflict, and in some cases poverty. And while he's trying to pursue Quasimodo's mother because she thinks she is harbouring stolen goods, he later finds out that she was harbouring a baby, and of course the baby is deformed. So Frollo decides to throw it down a well before being stopped by the Archdeacon, who says, "You've spilt blood on the steps of Notre Dame. You have to do something to be forgiven of your sins, to be absolved of your sins. The only way you can do this is to raise the child as your own." Frollo isn't happy about this, but he decides, instead of, just basically throwing him away or discarding him, taking him to an orphanage or to care, he decides to let him live in the church of Notre Dame as the bell ringer. And he calls the child Quasimodo, which means half-formed, but it's also in reference to a Catholic Christian holiday called Quasimodo Sunday, which actually falls on certain Sundays. But I really do like that detail. I like the fact that there's a little bit more to that naming than just him being a cruel asshole about Quasimodo. So that actually makes it more, it makes it make more sense. And I'm also going to be jumping back and forth between talking about the animated version and the book and the stage play, the off-Broadway stage play. That's actually really brilliant. If you want to see the stage play in its entirety, there's a bootleg version on YouTube that really just absolutely is of good quality, and it's a really good experience to actually watch the play, and it's actually very good to actually see how they pull off all these little, wonderful set pieces on stage, and how they're able to flesh out the characters and really give them more to do in the actual story. So I'm going to be jumping back and forth between the two things because it's actually fulfilling my quota of talking about a stage play eventually. So I think that's something that's very important about me doing this particular episode of Musical Mondays, because I want to tackle more musical films and, theatre pieces, but I'll also be talking about music as well. So there's a lot of other stuff going on here. But yes, Frollo's a bit of a not very nice guy. He wants to keep, Quasimodo trapped in Notre Dame. He doesn't really get the chance to see many people, so he's eventually gone mad, and he starts to feel that the gargoyles are talking to him, but then he also starts to talk to his bells as company, and he starts to name them things like Maria and things like that, and Sophia and things like that, like really, giving these bells personalities and things like that. And I really do like the fact that the stage play adds the detail that Quasimodo has gotten deaf from ringing the bells all the time. So whenever he tries to talk to Frollo, he has to basically do sign language, and that's something that I really do like, because that was something that was carried over from the stage play, and I really do like the fact that the stage play also lifted that from the original Victor Hugo novel, because that's something that the original film didn't do, because of course they probably didn't want to they probably felt it was very awkward to just animate a character moving his hands or something like that all the time, but they wanted to give a Quasimodo personality, they wanted to give him a voice, and that's something that they were able to do in this film version. But this film is just fantastic. Everything from the songs to the set pieces, it's all very well done. Frollo in the film version, he's an irredeemable asshole. He's a religious zealot. He's very heavily bigoted. He has a certain hatred for the Romani people, and he keeps describing them as demonstrating witchcraft, even though technically there's no proof of this, either in the novel or in the original Disney film or anything like that. There's no proof of this. He just basically is interpreting stage illusions, like disappearing in a puff of smoke, as witchcraft, when in reality it's an old theatre trick. It's something that a lot of actors who have done theatre know how that's done, and of course anyone who's a fan of comic books will know that Batman uses the disappearing smoke as a way of getting away from difficult situations, either when he's hiding from the police or doing something like that. In the early days of his vigilantism, he would often use disappearing smoke to kind of get away from difficult situations. So it's not witchcraft, it's just a stage illusion. So yeah, get with the times, Frollo. But yeah, he's not a very nice person in the original Disney film, but in the stage play, he's given much more depth and he's given much more character. He grew up, he's a priest in the original stage play, and he's also a very heavily religious man, but he has a brother called Jihan, who is the opposite of Frollo. He's much more fun and outgoing. Frollo is fun and very caring to his brother, but he feels like he's very much a stickler for the rules. He loves to follow things by the book. He goes, oh no, you've got to do your catechism, Jihan. You can't go out drinking to taverns and things like that. And he goes, no, I don't want to do the priesthood. I'm perfectly fine being who I am and where I am and things like that. And he's not very, he's not very happy with the idea of becoming a priest. But Frollo wants him to, because of course they're brothers and they're very close. So when he finds out that his brother has basically left the church after taking a Romani woman as his wife, Frollo has to basically keep the Romani woman hidden, but then the archdeacon, the person above, Frollo, decides to excommunicate Jihan when he finds the Romani woman, and this breaks the heart of Frollo, and of course it causes a rift between the two brothers. And years later, Frollo searches far and wide for his brother, only to find that he's basically dying. He's on his deathbed, and his brother has given birth to a son who is half formed. And this is where, the actual plot of the story goes. Frollo decides to take care of the child out of, just love and his last dying wish for his brother to take care of him and raise his child as his own. And it's actually very sad because it adds a certain level of complexity to Frollo. He's kind of like the Disney villain version of Eddard Stark, where he does something very noble, but then we very slowly... Eddard Stark is an amazing character in Game of Thrones. He was the first character to die, so you really do get this impression that he is a very lovely character, and he was one of my favourite characters. So when he, makes that big sacrifice, it's very heartbreaking. But he basically is that. But imagine if Frollo... It's revealed that Frollo... But imagine... I made the comparison between Eddard Stark and Frollo in the stage version of Hunchback of Notre. Imagine if Frollo, it was revealed that... Imagine if Eddard Stark said, when it came to the mystery of who Jon Snow's mother was, imagine if it was revealed that he had actually had a fling with an underage woman. How heartbreaking would that be? How horrible would that make Ed? And how, creepy would that make Ned and make us go, oh no, that's made him a bit of a creep now. That's kind of like what happens with Frollo, because there's a subplot where he becomes obsessed with Esmeralda, who's this new gypsy girl who he meets at the Feast of Fools, which is a festival that the Romani people give to all the citizens of Paris as a means of entertainment, as a means of, earning their bread and, earning extra money, because most of these people who have migrated to Paris, the Romani people who have migrated to Paris, are often poor and not living in very good conditions. So they basically have to think outside the box to really entertain people. And so the Feast of Fools is their way of doing that. And Frollo meets Esmeralda during the Feast of Fools when Quasimodo is also present. After singing his song Out There, he expresses desires to go out and see the festival and see what people are talking about and see all the fun of life and, this festival. And this is where he also meets Esmeralda. And there's a bit of a love triangle or a bit of a love square between him, between Frollo, Quasimodo, Esmeralda, and the captain of the guard, Phoebus, who has just returned from a war, a very unnamed war, and he just wants a bit of, rest and relaxation. There's an entire song that Phoebus sings about this in the stage play. And Phoebus is a very fascinating character. He's voiced by Kevin Kline in the original Disney film. And in the original book, he's a bit of a creep, in the sense that he actually tries to force himself on Esmeralda, but Frollo kills him before Esmeralda could, scream or do anything like that. It really is kind of like thankful, because Phoebus is a creep in the book. That's all I can say. But yeah, he's not a very nice person either. So every character is unlikable in the book. So don't read the book, is my advice. But it is a good book, but I definitely do say that certain characters who you might find lovable from either the Disney version or the stage play are kind of given a bit of a downgrade in the book and are given a little less material to work with. But there are instances where there is a lot of depth and a lot of care and consideration to certain characters like Frollo or Quasimodo or Esmeralda. But Esmeralda is a character who basically meets Quasimodo, and she unintentionally, causes a riot between the citizens of Paris, who eventually, start to mock Quasi after he wins the King of Fools contest. And they whip him, they tie him to a wheel, and they spin him round. He basically is humiliated, people are throwing through to him. It's a very humiliating prospect, but Frollo just basically sits back and says, I'm not going to intervene here because a lesson needs to be learned here and things like that. So there's a lot of animosity there, but he also says we should show kindness to this creature. And in the stage play, he even says, in a sort of revival of his song, The World is Cruel, The World is Wicked, he says, how could you do this to me? Like, how could you betray my trust and, not follow my orders? How could you do this to me? And it's such a powerful moment because it shows that Frollo isn't an arsehole in the play. He isn't a total irredeemable arsehole. Yes, he has these douchey moments, but he's not a total monster. He's a guy who really cared for his brother, and he really cared for his religion enough to join the priesthood. So you really do get this impression that he is a very nice guy, and you really do get the impression that he just wants to do good. But sadly, because his faith, coupled with his lust for Esmeralda, and his care for Quasimodo, a lot of stuff is kind of starting to mix together in his mind, and he turns into this very twisted individual. And it all really culminates with the Hellfire sequence, where he basically makes his lust for Esmeralda known, and he really just starts to sing, this isn't my fault, it was her fault, it was her who cast the spell on me. And he even says, we're literally at this stage where he literally says the words, "Let her be mine," or "She will burn," essentially. And it's a really horrible sequence, but it's actually really a great sequence as well, because it really shows how dark Disney could get. And it was a Disney villain song that was so good when it first came out that Disney didn't end up doing a song for another 10 years. That's how good Hellfire was. Like, they literally felt like, we can't top this, it's that good. And it's such a good song. It's literally a song. There have been multiple covers of this song on YouTube. If you type in Hellfire from the Hunchback of Notre Dame, cover songs, there's a ton. There's an entire list. There's an entire page of recommendations. So if you ever get the time, please check out one of the covers from a guy called Jonathan Young. He's a fantastic singer, and I really just think his version is really intense and very, sinister, but I really just love his version. But of course, check out the original version if you can. If you've got a copy of the original Disney film on Disney Plus, please go and check it out there, or go and check out a YouTube version of it. I'm sure there's plenty of versions of the original Disney version, but I would definitely highly recommend it. Of course, the stage version really adds a lot more subtext to Frollo, because he's got a lot more depth in this version, and he isn't just simply, this horrible asshole. He's actually a person who has feelings, and, he actually has a past and a backstory, and actually a reason for hating the Romani people outside of his faith. He feels like the Romani people broke up his family through him, his brother, going out with and, dating a Romani woman. It was he sort of blames her for breaking up his family, for breaking up his relationship with his brother. So he kind of feels a deep hatred for the Romani people after, after that particular incident. So there's a lot more depth there. Yes, that doesn't give him the justification to do what he does to both Esmeralda and the entirety of the Romani people in the story of the Hunchback of Notre Dame, but that definitely does give a certain degree of layering to his character, and gives us further, complexity to his character of why he would do the things that he would do. But this entire musical is just a fantastic ride from start to finish, whether you're talking about the original Disney film, or the original or the stage play, the off-Broadway stage play, or the original Victor Hugo novel. It's just fantastic. So let me know what you thought of both the Disney version of the Hunchback of Notre Dame and the original, the off-Broadway version, or if you've read the book, what do you think about it? And that's been my review for the Hunchback of Notre Dame. I hope you guys all enjoyed. And if you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. And this has been Josh of Whimsical and Interesting Musings. I hope you're all doing very well, and take care. Bye for now.